This is a brief introduction to Aboriginal English. Before the arrival of the Europeans in Australia, Aboriginal communities were separate, and there was a rich tapestry of about 250 different Aboriginal languages and at least 600 distinct dialects. Linguists say the differences between each Aboriginal language would be similar to that of the differences between modern-day Spanish and English. The languages were very complex as well. An easy Aboriginal language is estimated to be the complexity equivalent of Latin. When the British settlers landed, they brought the English language with them. Due to the British being unwilling to learn any Aboriginal languages, a simplified form of communication ensued, and there appeared pidgin varieties as the settlers tried to communicate with the Aboriginals. Over time, some of these pidgins expanded linguistically due to the important role they had as a communication tool, and these early pidgins birthed Aboriginal dialects of English around Australia. As the settlers became more and more predominant, the confused Aboriginals became more of a combined social group, and Aboriginal English was adopted as a lingua franca between different Aboriginal communities who spoke different dialects. There are also some places where it appears that Aboriginal English does not just have pidgin roots. Instead, the language has morphed from Aboriginals learning standard Australian English and bringing their own pronunciations and grammars. Aboriginal English is known as an ETHNOLECT for this very reason. The language defines and distinguishes the Aboriginal ethnicity, being an amalgamation of standard English and their own dialects. Aboriginals have not changed their worldview, they have merely clothed their views with the English language. There is no one correct form of Aboriginal English, just like there is no one correct form of English. There is a continuum of Aboriginal English dialects, like other dialects of English, and each dialect has regional differences. Burridge says, varieties range from something that is virtually identical to standard Australian English in everything but accent through to pure Creole that is so remote from standard Australian English as to be mutually unintelligible. The dialects closer to Creole are known as heavy, whilst those closer to standard Australian English are known as light. There are some features that belong to many dialects of Aboriginal English, whilst there are some others which only belong to a select few heavy dialects. Let's have a listen to SHIRLEY, PURDIE, a contemporary Indigenous Australian artist who won the 2007 Blake Prize for Religious Art.
This shows. Yeah, this is like, well, when I was little girl, that's why I liked doing religion painting. My old people used to tell me that we got a good man up here, and he come down and fix all the people.
In Australian English, the H sound at the beginning of words such as hotel and Hannah is often omitted. In traditional Aboriginal languages, there is no H sound, and so when Aboriginals learn English, they still speak in their own accent and do not produce the phoneme. There is also evidence to suggest that this pronunciation is also influenced by accents of the first settlers, namely Irish and Cockney settlers, who did not pronounce the H sound either. Aboriginal languages also rarely have fricative sounds, F, V, or TH. And so when speaking English, some Aboriginals replace these sounds with other consonants, for example P or B for F, for example pat or bat for fat, and T or D for the sound TH, for example tank or dank for thank. You can hear this when Purdy says the words the and that, as she replaces the TH with a D phoneme.
When I was little girl, that's why I liked doing, and he come down and fix all the people.
Much of the grammar in Aboriginal English parallels that of many Aboriginal varieties. For example, to denote possession in Aboriginal English, the possessor and the possessed are juxtaposed, like where Sally cat, as opposed to where is Sally's cat. Another distinct feature is the verb suffix marker, m and im, to express the verb is transitive, i.e. an object follows. For example, John seen Sally cat would translate to John saw Sally's cat. Another difference is the usage of e to replace pronouns he, she, and it. This merged universal pronoun can obstruct gender at times, but often, given the context and after inference, misunderstanding is avoided. For example, where is your brother? He's at the pub would imply that e is replacing he. Such grammatical constructions originate from Aboriginal dialects. PURDIE also uses e as the pronoun.
And he take them away. They used to tell us, like, old people used to tell me a story about him, and I didn't know. And this good man come down from top, and he fix them all up.
The lexicon of Aboriginal English is very complicated and sometimes differs greatly to that of Standard Australian English in different regions. Policeman is a fascinating word, which seems to be one of the last words forgotten in any Aboriginal dialect. Policeman is bullyman from English policeman in Queensland. Ganjibal from English constable in New South Wales. Mardanua, meaning person with chains, in Geraldton, and the list goes on. Furthermore, there are some standard Australian English words which have different meanings in Aboriginal English. In Aboriginal culture, the family or clan is very extended. So whilst the word mother means the woman who raised you in standard English, it means the woman who raised you and her sisters in Aboriginal English. An Aboriginal child would not only be raised up by parents and siblings, but also extended family. This is why aunties are known as mothers and cousins are known as sisters in Aboriginal English. There are also some unique words in Aboriginal English, such as cousin brother, which means father's brother's son in Standard English. Aboriginals have a different worldview to mainstream Australians. For example, something as simple as I'm going to lunch now has different implications. In Aboriginal English, this would be considered an invitation to eat lunch together. Aboriginals have the belief that if I eat, you are eating too. However, in Standard Australian English, it would just be a statement. There would be no implication of invitation. Expressing gratitude after a meal is also interesting. Mainstream Australians usually say thank you after a meal to acknowledge the chef. Yet in Aboriginal English, it is neither rude nor necessary to say a compliment, as Aboriginals believe that as a community, it is a responsibility and obligation to feed the family. The concept of home is a huge difference in worldview. Whilst in Standard English, home just means a building or a yard. In Aboriginal English, home means family. This has been known to cause issues such as Aboriginal students completing homework. Non-Aboriginal students will complete their homework quietly and calmly. However, this is not the case with Aboriginal students, as home connotes a sense of bustling excitement, and the more people around, the better. A united family comes before isolation and education in Aboriginals' worldview. For this reason, many non-Aboriginal teachers find difficulty in teaching Aboriginal children. Aboriginal English has an imperative role in maintaining and preserving Aboriginal identity. It is used as a marker of identity and culture, and even though many traditional dialects are now extinct, Aboriginal ways of communication remain resilient, and this is reflected in Aboriginal English. These conventions of using the language and pronunciation patterns allow a sense of comfort and reassurance between Aboriginal speakers. Most Aboriginals today are bidialectal. That means they can speak both English and their home dialect. Aboriginals use different varieties of English in different situations. When at home, they speak their own dialect, known as home talk. However, when around non-Aboriginals, they code switch to flash talk, speaking a variety of English closer to Standard Australian English. Eads comments, like bilingual speakers, they can use their linguistic and communicative skills to participate effectively both in their own communities and in mainstream society. Aboriginal English is often seen as uneducated, poor English, and inferior to Standard English. This view sprouts from the fact that Aboriginal English has many unique features. Over the years, linguists have delved into Aboriginal English and analysed the many distinct features of a grammatically organised and sound language. Standard English itself is merely one dialect of English. It does not have a superior linguistic status over other dialects of English. It is simply the dialect of English which is spoken by the more predominant and prominent social groups, and which has therefore become the primary language of law, social media, and education. Yet to this day, many people still erroneously assume that Aboriginal English is substandard. Aboriginals have to endure this social stigma every day, even though they are bi-dialectal and managing multiple languages, whilst ironically, their critics are usually monolingual. The dominance of Aboriginal English has also come at a cost. Australia has the worst track record of linguistic attrition in the world, with 90% of Aboriginal dialects critically endangered. More and more children prefer to use Aboriginal English as their form of communication rather than their local dialect. Whiteman comments, "Loss of language and the knowledge it contains has serious social, biological, cultural, and heritage outcomes for all people, but especially for future generations of Aboriginal people as custodians of traditional knowledge. Language death has severe consequences. Losing an Aboriginal dialect means losing a part and parcel of Aboriginal culture."